16 black R&B singers who had children die tragically. James Brown, Tina Turner, and Prince are shocking names associated with profound family tragedies hidden behind their brilliant halos. You will be shocked to hear their stories about the pain of losing their own flesh and blood. We are our Memory Vault, your companion in this video. This video is designed to be a comforting presence, perfect for you to enjoy during your moments of rest at a cozy family dinner or while doing lighthouse chores. Every piece of information in this video has been thoroughly researched and carefully curated from multiple sources by the Our Memory Vault team. However, knowledge is endless. If there are any details you would like to contribute, please do not hesitate to leave a comment below so we can improve every day. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button, and turn on notifications to be the first to watch our latest videos. Now, let us begin immediately with our first figures. James Brown. For audiences who were once captivated by the vibrant rhythms of the 60s and 70s, James Brown was not just a singer, he was a cultural phenomenon, hailed as the godfather of soul. James Brown was famous for his frantic performance style, masterful dance moves, and absolute stage control. Anyone who ever worked with him knew of his extreme strictness in music. He could find his band right on stage just for a single missed note. That iron discipline created an empire named James Brown, where everything always seemed to rest firmly in the palm of this talented artist's hand. However, fate has its twists that no amount of power or money can control. In 1973, tragedy struck and shattered his perfect world when his eldest son, Teddy Brown, passed away suddenly in a devastating traffic accident. At that time, Teddy was only 19 years old, in the prime of his youth, with so many ambitions waiting ahead. The pain of losing his own flesh and blood, the son in whom he had placed so much hope, was an overwhelmingly massive shock. For a father who always yearned to control everything like James, the helplessness before the boundary of his son's life and death was truly a devastating blow that words cannot describe. From the perspective of our Memory Vault, the most unforgiving aspect of fame is that the artist is not allowed to break down. After Teddy's passing, James Brown still had to step onto the stage, still had to wear his sparkling suits and deliver his highly energetic music to the audience. Fans applauded and cheered for the hardest working man in show business. But how many truly understood the cold emptiness inside the aching heart of a grieving father? That pain did not make him collapse entirely, but it left a profound scar, turning his fiery performances thereafter into a mask hiding a deeply wounded soul. If the helpless tragedy of the godfather of soul has left you heartbroken, then please hold your breath. The unnatural pain that the Queen Tina Turner had to endure in the very next segment will certainly leave you speechless. Tina Turner. Mentioning Tina Turner, we are speaking of an immortal symbol of resilience and the strength to rise from the ashes. Through turbulent years of her youth in a toxic marriage with Ike Turner, she brushed off the dirt to stand up, started over in her middle age, and became the globally dominating queen of rock and roll. To the mature generation of audiences, Tina is not only a legendary voice with a raspy, powerful tone, but she is also a fierce inspiration for life. People believed that a woman who had overcome such immense storms of her youth would get to enjoy the most peaceful and fulfilling days in her twilight years. Yet life seemingly never stopped testing the endurance of this great mother. In 2018, while enjoying her senior years in Switzerland, Tina received the devastating news that her eldest son, Craig Raymond Turner, had passed away at the age of 59. The image of her scattering her son's ashes into the sea, calling it "my saddest moment," as a mother has haunted countless audiences who loved her. Before that, pain could even subside just 4 years later. In 2022, her second son, Ronnie Turner, also departed this world at the age of 62, only months before Tina herself passed away. Our Memory Vault believes that Tina Turner's tragedy carries a heartbreakingly cruel nuance. Her entire life was a triumphant song over adversity. But as a mother, she had to experience the most unnatural pain, the white-haired parent sending off the black-haired child not just once, but twice. The passing of her two sons in their middle ages shows that death spares no one, and no amount of fame can shield their family from the impermanence of life. Nevertheless, her silence and the way she faced the pain in her final years only further highlighted the incredible fortitude of a legend who never surrendered to fate. Prince. The 1980s witnessed the rise of an unprecedented musical genius who broke every standard of genre and style. Prince. The blend of funk, soul, R&B, and rock turned him into a global cultural phenomenon. In the eyes of the public, Prince was an artist who always exuded an aura of mystery, pride, and a touch of eccentricity. He built a private world for himself, where he freely swam in his music, allowing no one to interfere with his personal life. The audience saw an energetic Prince under the purple lights, but very few had the chance to see through the soft, vulnerable corners behind that sharp gaze. The year 1996 was supposed to be the most fulfilling year for Prince when he married dancer Mate Garcia and eagerly awaited their first child. However, that ultimate happiness quickly vanished and turned into the darkest nightmare. Their son baby, Amir Gregory Nelson, was born with Pfeiffer syndrome type 2, a rare congenital condition. That fragile little life remained in this world for a mere 6 days before closing his eyes forever. Having to walk out of the hospital with empty arms, leaving behind the child he had longed for every single day, was a crushing blow to the soul of the brilliant artist. From the viewpoint of our memory vault, Prince's story is the clearest testament to the profound loneliness of fame. While the whole world was waiting for new hit songs, Prince withdrew into a mourning that could not be shared. The shock of losing his child created irreparable cracks in his marriage, leading to their divorce a few years later. Prince rarely, if ever, spoke about Amir to the media, but those close to him knew that the pain had forever changed him. Behind a proud musical legend was a father holding on to the memory of his 6-day-old child until the very end of his life. The mournful secret hidden behind Prince's purple lights has been revealed. But do you know what sudden tragedy forever changed the music of Sam Cooke? Please do not look away, because the story right after this will make your heart ache. Sam Cooke. If we must name someone who laid the foundation for modern soul music, Sam Cooke would undoubtedly be the first name called. With a voice as smooth as velvet, Sam Cooke blended gospel music with popular pop, creating timeless love songs that captivated millions of hearts. To older audiences, he was not only an exceptional singer, but also an astute businessman and a pioneer fighting for the rights of Black artists. An incredibly bright and powerful future was opening up before this profoundly talented young man. However, in 1963, a family tragedy struck that forever stripped away the radiant smile always present on his lips. Sam Cooke's little son, baby Vincent, tragically drowned in the family's swimming pool when he was only 18 months old. There was no warning illness, no time to mentally prepare. It was a sudden household accident that left a pain piercing to the very core. Unlike other losses, an accident within one's own home always carries an endless torment and haunting guilt for the parents. According to our Memory Vault's perspective, the death of baby Vincent was not just a family tragedy, but a turning point that completely changed the depth of Sam Cooke's music. The sweet love songs gradually gave way to tracks heavily laden with life's struggles, culminating in the masterpiece A Change Is Gonna Come. Although the song carried a grand social message, one could still feel the choked sobs of a father who had tasted the ultimate sorrow. Tragically, only about a year and a half after losing his son, Sam Cooke's own life was taken in a deeply mysterious incident, closing the chapter on a brilliant but deeply unfortunate family. Gladys Knight, gentle, warm, and brimming with emotion. That is what millions of middle-aged fans remember about Gladys Knight, the woman hailed as the Empress of Soul. Growing up with the band The Pips, her voice was like a comforting embrace, soothing listeners through classic melodies. Despite standing at the pinnacle of fame, Gladys Knight always maintained a calm, humble demeanor and placed her family as her highest priority. For her, a career was not about outer glitter, but a long journey where she could share and work alongside her most beloved relatives. Exactly because of that deep family bond, the tragedy that befell her brought double the pain. Her son James Newman III, often called Jimmy, was not just her flesh and blood, but also a talented manager, the man behind the scenes, taking care of his mother's entire career. In 1999, Jimmy suddenly passed away at the age of 36 due to heart failure. For a mother, having to bury a son who was in the prime of his life is pure agony. But for Gladys, she did not just lose a son. She lost a soulmate, an indispensable right-hand man who had accompanied her through the many ups and downs of her career. Our Memory Vault deeply admires how Gladys Knight faced the storm. Without screaming or exposing her pain to the media, she chose to compress her tears inside, to continue maintaining the musical legacy that she and her son had built together. Imagine, how can a singer flawlessly deliver a song on stage when every spotlight, every performance contract, and every musical arrangement carries the deep imprint of her departed son? Gladys Knight's composure in her later years was not forgetfulness, but the extraordinary endurance of a mother with an aching heart, turning her pain into the motivation to sing the unfinished part of her son's life. Jackie Wilson, affectionately dubbed by the public as Mr. Excitement, Jackie Wilson was one of the most charismatic performing artists in music history. For the generation of audiences who once immersed themselves in the melodies of the 50s and 60s, the image of Jackie in elegant suits executing masterful sliding steps with a soaring voice is deeply etched in their minds. He did not simply sing, he turned every song into an explosive performance of emotion and energy. The audience saw a man who seemingly possessed an endless source of vitality, always shining brightly under the stage lights and bringing joy to millions. However, behind that perfect facade and radiant smile was a life filled with far too many storms. Jackie Wilson had to endure profound agony as he sequentially witnessed his children leave this earthly realm. First was the sudden passing of his son Jackie Jr. in 1970 due to a tragic incident. It did not stop there. Fate continued to test his endurance when two of his daughters also passed away at very young ages. Having to repeatedly bid farewell to his own flesh and blood was a massive psychological burden that no words can fully describe. The Our Memory Vault team observes that the stage was Jackie Wilson's only sanctuary. He evaded the dark corners of his family tragedy by dedicating himself entirely to the spotlight, exhausting his strength in every dance step so he wouldn't have to face the emptiness when the velvet curtains closed. His collapse from a stroke right while performing the song Lonely Teardrops in 1975 seemed to be the overflowing accumulation of both physical and mental exhaustion. Jackie Wilson spent his whole life bringing joy to the world, but he quietly hid the lonely tears of an unfortunate father. Eddie Levert. If music could sketch a picture of family unity, the O'Jays and their lead vocalist Eddie Levert would be the most vibrant strokes of color. For many decades, Eddie's powerful and emotive voice became the launchpad for a series of classic songs. To middle-aged audiences, he is the symbol of elegance, nostalgic values, and love. His greatest pride was not just the prestigious gold records, but the fact that his sons Gerald and Sean Levert successfully followed the artistic path together, creating a musical dynasty named the Levert family. But then, a dark curtain fell over that pride. In 2006, his son Gerald Levert suddenly passed away at the age of 40 due to an adverse reaction to prescribed medications. Only 2 years later, the pain once again tore the old father's heart apart when his second son, Sean Levert, closed his eyes forever due to a severe illness. Just when it seemed that this was the absolute end of the cruelty in 2024, the world was once again stunned by the news that his youngest son, Ryan Levert, also departed this life at the age of 22. Bidding farewell to 3 sons is a torment far beyond the endurance of any parent. Through the lens of Our Memory Vault, Eddie Levert's resilience carries an epic, heartbreaking beauty. Whenever he steps onto the stage to perform in his twilight years, fans do not just hear the voice of a legend, but they also hear the echoes of his departed sons. Instead of collapsing before a cruel fate, Eddie chose to use music to keep the legacies of Gerald, Sean, and Ryan alive. The image of a solitary old father bearing the weight of 3 deep emotional wounds, yet still raising his voice high, is the greatest testament to the unparalleled strength of a father's love. Bobby Womack. Bobby Womack is always remembered as a poet of street soul music. His raspy, raw, and melancholic voice was not polished or refined, but it carried the authentic breath of lives filled with hidden corners. He sang about love betrayal and the ups and downs of human life with a deeply bare honesty. Audiences who had weathered the storms of life often found a profound resonance in Bobby's music because they understood that only those who had truly tasted the depths of pain could produce sounds that cut so deeply into the heart. And that pain, sadly, was most clearly present in his own family home. Bobby Womack's life was a series of successive misfortunes wherein the greatest wound was losing his 2 sons. Baby Truth. Bobby forever closed his eyes when he was only 4 months old, leaving behind an empty room and an inexcusable despair for a father. Years later, tragedy repeated itself when his older son Vincent, unable to overcome heavy psychological pressures, chose to free himself, ending his incomplete youth in the utter shock of the family. Our Memory Vault believes that it was these horrific family tragedies that shaped the Bobby Womack we came to know in his later years. His singing was not merely vocal technique, it was the narrative of a soul full of scars. Having to face an empty crib and then the desperate departure of a grown child made him realize that fame also becomes meaningless in the face of life and death. Music became his sole sedative, where Bobby entrusted all the unshed tears of a father filled with regrets and mourning. Otis Williams. In the history of American music, The Temptations is an immortal monument, and Otis Williams is the anchor that kept that ship from sinking through the storms of time. As a founding member, and the only one from the original lineup to remain, Otis Williams symbolizes perseverance, discipline, and tireless dedication. The audience always saw him appearing with a radiant demeanor, executing synchronized, perfect dance steps with the band. He was the glue that bonded generations of members, carrying the responsibility of preserving the great legacy that the Temptations had meticulously built over decades. However, while striving to maintain his musical family, he had to face the shattering of his own private home. In 1983, the son he loved so dearly, Otis Lamont Williams, suffered a severe workplace accident at a construction site and did not survive. The sudden departure of the young man was a devastating blow straight to the father's heart. That unexpected accident destroyed Otis's peaceful world, forcing him to face a cruel truth: he could steer a legendary band through any crisis. But he was completely helpless in protecting his own flesh and blood. From the perspective of our Memory Vault, Otis Williams had to pay the steepest price of those in the arts. Despite the overwhelming morning performance contracts still had to be fulfilled, the audience was still waiting, and the stage lights did not allow him to break down. Having to swallow his tears, put on his sparkling performance uniform and smile on stage, even when his heart was shattered, showcased the extraordinary fortitude of an artist. Behind that great career, spanning more than 6 decades, lies the silent sacrifice and the endless loneliness of a father who permanently lost his beloved son. George Clinton. If R&B and soul often carry a soothing tone, George Clinton brought a completely different universe. Funk. Dubbed the godfather of funk, George Clinton and his Parliament Funkadelic projects created an explosive, vibrant, and highly imaginative musical world. To fans, he was like a character stepping out of outer space, bringing liberating energy and absolute freedom. His performances were endless musical parties where all the sorrows of daily life were washed away by wild and exhilarating rhythms. Yet that colorful fantasy world could not protect him from the harsh rules of reality. In 2010, George Clinton had to face a cold and gray truth. His son, George Clinton Jr., suddenly passed away at the age of 50 in his own home. When a person crosses the age of 50, they usually expect peace, but tragedy struck without warning due to health issues. Having to personally arrange the funeral for the child who bore his exact name was an achingly painful experience, pulling the brilliant artist from his soaring space back to the most cruel reality of human existence. Our Memory Vault's viewpoint points out a deeply poignant contrast in George Clinton's life. Funk music was born to bring joy, to help people escape from their sorrows, but the very person who created it could not escape this immense loss. His colorful cape and bizarre sunglasses now seem to become a screen hiding a pair of sorrowful eyes. The fact that George Clinton continues to tour and spread joy to the audience, even while carrying an unfillable void inside, proves that sometimes the person who brings laughter to the whole world is the one carrying the deepest sorrow in their heart. Bobby Brown. Mentioning Bobby Brown, fans of 80s and 90s R&B music certainly cannot forget the image of a ruggedly handsome young man who defined the golden era of New Jack Swing, possessing explosive energy, masterful dance moves, and a highly confident style. Bobby Brown was once the symbol of passionate youth and the desire for freedom. His world-reaching hit songs not only brought him ultimate fame, but also turned him into one of the most influential male singers of his time. However, accompanying that dazzling halo was a private life full of storms where his hidden corners were constantly dissected by the public. The most profound agony in Bobby Brown's life did not come from the ups and downs of his career, but from the successive departures of his beloved children. In 2015, the whole world was shocked when his daughter Bobby Christina Brown, the culmination of love between him and the legendary Whitney Houston, passed away at the age of 22 following a heartbreaking medical incident that lasted for months. Just when it seemed that this father's heart was shattered beyond repair, in 2020, tragedy repeated itself once more. His son, Bobby Brown Jr., also departed this life at the age of 28, leaving an eternally unfillable void in the family. Having to stand before the caskets of his own children twice is a cruelty beyond anyone's capacity to endure. The Our Memory Vault team observes that the public is sometimes too harsh when judging a person by the mistakes of their youth, forgetting that deep down inside, Bobby Brown is still a father with boundless love. Having gone through the experience of the white-haired parent sending off the black-haired child twice his quietness in his later years is not a collapse, but an agonizing resignation to fate. Behind the masterful dance steps on the stage of the past, there is now the silhouette of a man carrying too large an emotional wound on his shoulders, reminding us that fame or wealth all become meaningless in the face of life and death separations. Betty Wright. Betty Wright is one of the voices that defined the identity of Miami soul in the 70s, making a huge splash when she was just a teenage girl. With her powerful vocals, liberated performance style, and top-tier vocal techniques, she conquered millions of mature audiences worldwide. Not only was she a talented singer, but Betty Wright was also known as a producer, a dedicated mentor, who inspired and guided countless generations of young artists entering the industry. She sang about love, resilience, and profound life philosophies using the very life experiences of a strong, independent woman. However, right on Christmas Day in 2005, a sacred moment meant for reunion and family joy, a devastating tragedy took the life of her 21-year-old son, Patrick Parker. This sudden and heartbreaking incident turned the warmest festival day of the year into an anniversary filled with tears. There is no pain that pierces the soul more than a gentle mother receiving the tragic news of the passing of her own flesh and blood right in the moment when every other home is echoing with peaceful carols. The child she had dedicated her whole life to loving and caring for was forever stopped at his prime age of 21. Our Memory Vault's perspective shows that Betty Wright's greatness lies not only in her soaring high notes, but also in how she embraced the pain to continue living a meaningful life. After Patrick's passing, she did not let her heart turn to stone. Instead, she used that very interrupted sacred maternal love to continue loving, protecting, and guiding young artists in the music industry. Her standing strong and dedicating herself to art until her final days is the clearest testament to the extraordinary strength of a mother. Even if her heart is shattered, her love and sacrifice will always shine brightly to light the way for future generations. Cissy Houston. In the historical flow of American gospel and soul music, Cissy Houston is honored as a true matriarch, a solid foundation of great art, before the world knew the name. Whitney Houston. Cissy was already an outstanding background vocalist, standing behind the success of the most illustrious legends of the era. Her voice carried the strict discipline of the church, the depth of experience, and an unshakable spiritual strength. To the audience, she was the model of a traditional woman, strict yet overflowing with love, the one who nurtured a glorious musical dynasty for America. However, the greatness in her career was accompanied by the most cruel trials that fate could inflict upon a person. In 2012, the whole world shed tears over the sudden passing of her daughter, the legendary diva Whitney Houston. But for Cissy, she did not lose a musical idol. She lost the little girl she had raised with her own hands. Before that pain could even form a scar 3 years later, in 2015, she once again had to bid farewell to her only granddaughter, Bobby Christina Brown, under similarly heartbreaking circumstances. Having to experience this generational tragedy of loss was an unimaginably heavy burden for a woman who had entered her twilight years. Our memory vault deeply admires the poignant resilience of Cissy Houston. How could a mother or grandmother stand firm when having to witness the most important pieces of her family leaving one by one amidst a media storm? Unlike the noisiness of the public, Cissy chose to face the pain with a calm demeanor, dignity, and a fierce religious faith. Behind the image of a veteran artist is a woman of steel silently swallowing her tears to protect the little piece left for her family. The tragedy of Cissy Houston reminds us that behind every musical legend are often the silent tears of their parents. Brian McKnight. Brian McKnight is always remembered as a standard of romance, sophistication, and elegance in the R&B music of the 90s and early 2000s. His smooth voice, masterful vocal processing, and melodious piano playing became the soundtrack for millions of love stories, sweet weddings, and the most profound confessions. Audiences over the age of 45 always cherish Brian because he brought a mature kind of music where the soaring notes were raised to heal broken hearts. On stage, he always appeared with a calm image, a perfect gentleman of contemporary music. Yet the very music capable of soothing humanity could not heal the terminal illness that took the life of his beloved son. His son, Nico McKnight, a young man who also carried a fierce passion for the arts, had to endure a long journey fighting a cruel cancer before taking his last breath at the age of 32. Witnessing his own flesh and blood being consumed by illness day by day, despite having used every effort to save him, is a feeling of ultimate helplessness for a father. Our memory vault believes that Nico's passing left an unfillable silence in the soul of Brian McKnight. It is truly heart-wrenching to realize that an artist can use beautiful melodies to ease the sorrow of millions of listeners, but is completely hopeless in holding on to the heartbeat of his own son. The McKnight family's story is a deeply tormenting reminder of the fragility of human life. Behind the timeless love songs, Brian now also carries the silhouette of a father who has tasted the separation of life and death, making his notes even more profound and tinged with nostalgia. Usher. Usher is a brilliant symbol of the generational transition in R&B music, someone who skillfully combined masterful vocal techniques with explosive choreography. Growing from a child prodigy into a global superstar, Usher redefined the musical trends of the early 21st century. To the generation of audiences who followed him from the early days, Usher is not just a hit-making machine, but also a testament to relentless effort and total dedication to art. Under the flashing lights of the media, his life always seemed to be paved with roses and brilliant successes. However, behind that glamorous velvet curtain, Usher's family had to go through a massive tragedy that stole the tears of many. In 2012, his ex-wife Tamika Foster's 11-year-old stepson, little Kyle Glover, suffered a tragic water accident while playing on a lake. Although they did not share the same blood, Usher had bonded with, cared for, and raised Kyle since he was very young. The love the male singer had for the boy was as deep as any biological father's love. The sudden passing of an innocent, well-behaved child left an immensely profound psychological shock for the singer and the entire family. From the perspective of our memory vault, Usher's story touches the deepest core of family affection, proving that a father's love is not only created by blood, but also built by love and daily bonding. The pain of having to say goodbye to a child he had personally held and taught is something that cannot be fully expressed in words. Rising above the image of a glamorous entertainment superstar, audiences see in Usher a father with a shattered heart, quiet and vulnerable. Even as time passes and the tours continue, the image of that 11-year-old boy surely remains a mournful memory hidden deep within his heart. Merry Clayton. Mentioning the silent but greatest contributions in music history, Merry Clayton is a name that cannot be overlooked. Growing up from the cradle of gospel music and possessing a powerful soul voice, she became one of the most outstanding background vocalists of all time. For audiences who truly understand music, Mary's voice was an indispensable spice contributing to the resounding success of countless massive hits by A-list artists of that era. In the prime of her youth, overflowing with vitality, a brilliant future seemed to be opening up before the young woman especially, as she was carrying a tiny life inside her and eagerly preparing to step into the incredibly sacred role of motherhood. However, the boundary between an artistic masterpiece and a personal tragedy is sometimes far too fragile. Late one night in 1969, while 4 months pregnant, Merry Clayton was urgently called to the studio to record for an iconic music project. With all the passion and instinct of an artist, she exhausted every last ounce of her strength, pushing her voice to the highest limits to complete the hauntingly powerful climax. No one could have expected that the extreme physical and emotional dedication on that fateful night would lead to an agonizingly heartbreaking consequence. The very next day, she suffered a miscarriage, permanently losing her unborn child in utter shock and profound agony. The Our Memory Vault team feels deeply sorrowful when reflecting on this story because it exposes a cruelly harsh hidden corner of the studio lights. While the world gets to enjoy a legendary recording, an immortal musical legacy that lives on with time, the price paid for that masterpiece was the life of an innocent being. Whenever that melody plays, millions of listeners might get goosebumps because of the sheer perfection of the sound. But for Merry Clayton alone, it is forever a scar, reminding her of a little angel who left too soon. Her silent loss is a tragic low note, proving that there are pinnacles of fame paid for with the very tears, pain, and flesh and blood sacrifice of the artist. Closing the journey of seeing through the tear-soaked hidden corners behind the brilliant halos, we appreciate life even more and understand that family is always the most peaceful and priceless haven in a person's life. Our Memory Vault wishes you moments that are always happy, warm, and fulfilling alongside your loved ones. If this video brought you meaningful moments of reflection, do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Like the video and turn on the notification bell to continue accompanying us in our next stories.